Listen closely, because gratitude is not a reaction to life going right. It is a declaration that God is still right even when life feels wrong. Before the sun fully rises and before the noise of the day competes for your attention, you are standing at a spiritual crossroads. You can let circumstances dictate your attitude, or you can let faith define your response. Thanksgiving is not denial of pain. It is defiance against despair. It is the decision to trust God's sovereignty when you cannot trace his strategy. This morning we come not pretending that everything is perfect, but believing that God is present. Some woke up with joy. Others woke up with questions. Some woke up with strength. Others barely made it out of bed. Yet here is the unshakable truth. If God allowed you to wake up today, he has already proven he's not finished with you. Gratitude shifts the atmosphere. Complaints magnify the problem, but thanksgiving magnifies God. When you give thanks in every circumstance, you are not praising the storm. You are praising the one who walks on water. You are saying, Lord, I don't understand this season, but I trust your character. I don't see the outcome, but I believe in your promises. There is power released when praise comes before the breakthrough. Thanksgiving is faith speaking in advance. It is worship that refuses to wait for evidence. When you thank God in the middle of the trial, you remind your soul who is really in control. You realign your heart with heaven's perspective. This morning prayer is not about polished words. It's about surrendered hearts. Let us pray. Father, we thank you, not because everything is easy, but because you are faithful. We thank you for grace that carried us through yesterday and mercy that met us this morning. We thank you for strength we didn't know we had, peace that doesn't make sense, and hope that refuses to die. Lord, teach us to give thanks in every circumstance. When doors help us try direction. When prayers feel unanswered, help us believe you are still working. When we feel weak, remind us that your power is made perfect in our weakness. We choose gratitude over grumbling. We choose worship over worry. We choose faith over fear. Let thanksgiving guard our hearts today. Let praise be our posture. Let trust be our testimony. No matter what we face, we declare that you are good, you are present, and you are in control. Now listen, this prayer is not meant to stay here. Gratitude is not something you stumble into when life suddenly improves, and it is not a mood that rises and falls with your circumstances. Gratitude is a deliberate choice, a spiritual decision you make long before your emotions agree. Feelings are unstable. They change with the weather of your life. One moment you feel hopeful, the next moment you feel overwhelmed. If gratitude depended on feelings, it would disappear the moment pressure shows up. But when gratitude is a decision, it becomes anchored in faith rather than emotion. You choose to give thanks, not because everything makes sense, but because you trust the one who is in control of what doesn't. There are days when your heart doesn't feel thankful at all. You may wake up tired, burdened, or disappointed. The situation hasn't changed. The prayer hasn't been answered yet, and the weight is still there. In those moments, gratitude becomes an act of obedience rather than a natural response. You are deciding to honor God above your feelings. That decision says, I may not feel joy right now, but I will not allow my emotions to dictate my faith. Gratitude begins where feelings end. Choosing gratitude requires maturity. Immaturity reacts, maturity responds. Reacting says, I will thank God when he fixes this. Responding says, I will thank God because trust him in this. When you make gratitude a decision, you stop allowing circumstances to control your spiritual posture. You refuse to hand the steering wheel of your faith over to your emotions. Instead, you place it firmly in God's hands. Gratitude as a decision also means you understand that God's goodness is not measured by your comfort. Many people believe God is good only when life is smooth, but true faith recognizes God's goodness even when life is rough. When you decide to give thanks in difficult moments, you are declaring that God's character does not change with your circumstances. He is good on the mountain and he is good in the valley. Gratitude anchors your heart to that truth. This decision reshapes the way you see challenges. Instead of viewing trials as proof that God has left you, gratitude helps you see them as places where God is working. You may not enjoy the process, but you can still be thankful for the purpose. You may not like the pressure, but you can still trust the outcome. Gratitude allows you to say, I don't understand this season, but I believe it is not wasted. That belief gives you strength to endure without becoming bitter. When gratitude is a decision, it becomes a daily discipline. Just like prayer, it must be practiced intentionally. You don't wait for the right mood. You create the right mindset. You choose to thank God for breath in your lungs, strength to stand, and grace to continue. You choose to thank him for lessons learned, doors closed, and protection you didn't even notice. Gratitude trains your mind to look for God's hand instead of focusing on what's missing. This decision also protects your heart from resentment. When life hurts, the natural response is to complain, compare, or blame. But gratitude interrupts that cycle. It stops bitterness before it takes root. It reminds you that even in loss, you are not abandoned. Even in delay, you are not forgotten. Gratitude keeps your heart soft in seasons that could easily make it hard. Making gratitude a decision does not mean you ignore pain or pretend everything is fine. It means you refuse to let pain have the final word. You acknowledge a struggle, but you elevate your faith above it. You say, this is difficult, but it will not define me. This is heavy, but it will not break me. Gratitude gives you language to speak hope while you're still walking through hardship. Over time, this decision reshapes your spiritual identity. You become someone who thanks God consistently, not occasionally. You develop resilience because your faith is not tied to outcomes. You learn to praise God in advance, trusting that he is already at work behind the scenes. Gratitude becomes your default response, not because life is easy, but because your trust is deep. When gratitude is rooted in decision, it transforms the way you live each day. You stop chasing happiness and start cultivating faith. You stop waiting for perfect conditions and start walking in trust. You discover that gratitude does not follow victory. It often precedes it. And in choosing gratitude daily, you position your heart to remain steady, faithful, and anchored no matter what comes your way. Praise has a way of shifting what you cannot change with your own strength. Long before circumstances move, praise begins to move something deeper, the atmosphere around your heart, your mind, and your faith. Too often, people wait for things to improve before they lift their hands or open their mouths in thanksgiving. But praise was never designed to be a response to comfort. It was designed to be a weapon in conflict. When you choose to give thanks before the outcome changes, you are not ignoring reality. You're confronting it with faith. Atmospheres are shaped by what is spoken and what is believed. Fear creates an atmosphere of heaviness. Anxiety creates tension, and complaining produces discouragement. Praise does the opposite. It invites peace into chaos, clarity into confusion, and strength into weakness. The moment you begin to thank God in the middle of pressure, you interrupt the negative environment that stress tries to build around you. Praise shifts the focus from what is wrong to who is in control. When praise comes before the breakthrough, it sends a message to your spirit. It says that your confidence is not rooted in results, but in relationship. You are declaring that God's presence matters more than the problem. Even if the door has not opened yet, Praise acknowledges that God is still near. This kind of worship stabilizes you when everything else feels unstable. It keeps your soul anchored while the storm is still raging. Praise also changes the way you see your situation. Problems grow bigger when you stare at them too long. Worries multiply when they dominate your thoughts. Praise lifts your eyes above the problem and recenters your perspective. It reminds you that the challenge may be real, but it is not supreme. When God becomes larger in your vision, fear begins to shrink. The situation may not disappear, but it loses its power to control your emotions and decisions. There's a spiritual exchange that happens when praise rises before the breakthrough arrives. Worry drains energy, but praise restores it. Anxiety weakens faith, but thanksgiving strengthens it. As you praise, you are reminded of past victories, past rescues, and past moments when God made a way. That remembrance fuels present trust. You begin to realize that the same God who carried you then is still carrying you now, even if the evidence has not appeared yet. Praise before the breakthrough also prepares your heart to receive what God is doing. Sometimes the delay is not about timing alone. It is about alignment. Praise aligns your heart with God's will. It softens pride, quiets impatience, and humbles your expectations. Instead of demanding answers, you learn to rest in trust. Instead of rushing the process, you allow God to shape you through it. Praise keeps your spirit receptive rather than resistant. This kind of praise requires courage. It is easy to worship when prayers are answered and doors are open. It takes faith to praise when nothing has changed yet. But that faith-driven praise carries power. It declares that your hope is not dependent on visible progress. It is a bold statement that says, even here, even now, I choose to trust. That choice becomes a spiritual stand against doubt and discouragement. Praise also influences those around you. When people see you give thanks in difficult seasons, it challenges their understanding of faith. Your praise becomes a testimony without words. It shows that hope can exist in hardship and peace can remain in uncertainty. This kind of praise does not deny struggle. It demonstrates trust with ease. It creates an atmosphere where faith becomes contagious and despair loses its grip. Over time, praising before the breakthrough rewires your spiritual reflexes. Instead of panicking first, you pray first. Instead of complaining, you worship. Instead of sinking into fear, you lift your voice in thanksgiving. This habit strengthens your inner life and builds spiritual endurance. You become less shaken by delays and more confident in God's presence. Praise becomes your first response, not your last resort. When praise changes the atmosphere before it changes the outcome, it proves that faith is not passive. It is active, intentional, and resilient. It moves ahead of circumstances and declares victory before it is visible. It creates space for God to work in ways you cannot predict or control. Praise does not force the breakthrough, but it prepares the ground for it by establishing trust, peace, and unwavering confidence in the midst of uncertainty. When answers are delayed, silence can feel louder than words. You pray, you wait, and nothing seems to change. In that space between request and response, faith is tested not by what you receive, but by how you respond. Thanksgiving in delayed moments becomes a declaration that your trust is not dependent on immediate results. It says that even without clarity, you believe God is still attentive, still active, and still faithful. Delayed answers often challenge our understanding of God's timing. We live in a world that values speed and instant results, but faith operates on a different rhythm. When gratitude rises during waiting seasons, it acknowledges that delay does not equal denial. Thanksgiving becomes a way of saying, I don't see the answer yet, but I believe it is coming in the right time. and the right way. This kind of trust refuses to rush God simply because impatience is uncomfortable. Thanksgiving during delay also guards the heart from discouragement. Waiting can slowly wear down hope if it is not protected. Doubt creeps in quietly, asking questions that shake confidence and weaken resolve. Gratitude pushes back against those thoughts. It reminds the soul that God has been faithful before and has not changed now. By giving thanks, you are choosing to remember God's consistency rather than focus on unanswered questions. This declaration of trust shifts the focus from outcome to obedience. Instead of measuring faith by results, gratitude measures faith by surrender. You are not thanking God because you already see the answer. You are thanking Him because you trust His wisdom. This kind of thanksgiving releases the pressure to control the situation. It frees you from the burden of trying to figure everything out on your own. Delayed answers often mean deeper work is happening beneath the surface. While you wait for external change, God may be shaping your character, strengthening your patience, and refining your dependence on Him. Thanksgiving acknowledges that unseen work has value. It affirms that growth matters just as much as resolution. By giving thanks, you are agreeing that the process has purpose, even if it is uncomfortable. Gratitude also keeps communication with God open during delay. Many people stop praying or praising when answers don't come quickly. Thanksgiving does the opposite. It keeps the relationship active and alive. It says, I'm still here, still trusting, still believing. That posture keeps the heart soft instead of hardened by disappointment. It allows faith to mature rather than collapse under pressure. When thanksgiving declares trust in delay, it resists the urge to compare. Waiting becomes more difficult when you see others receiving what you are still praying for. Gratitude helps you stay focused on your own journey. It reminds you that God's plan is personal and His timing is intentional. By giving thanks, you reject jealousy and choose contentment, trusting that what is meant for you will arrive exactly when it should. This declaration also strengthens spiritual endurance. Waiting seasons require perseverance, and gratitude fuels that perseverance. It renews strength by shifting attention from frustration to faithfulness. Each act of thanksgiving becomes a small victory over doubt. Over time, those victories build confidence that God can be trusted even when the timeline is unclear. Thanksgiving during delayed answers also realigns expectations. Instead of demanding a specific outcome, you learn to trust God's will above your own desires. Gratitude helps you release rigid expectations and embrace flexibility. It opens your heart to possibilities you may not have considered. You begin to understand that God's answer may look different than you imagined, yet still be better than you expected. Trust declared through thanksgiving transforms waiting into worship. The delay no longer feels empty, it becomes meaningful. Each moment of patience becomes an opportunity to express faith. Instead of asking repeatedly, when will this change? Gratitude asks, how can I trust you more right now? That shift changes the emotional weight of waiting. As gratitude continues in delayed seasons, fear loses influence. Anxiety often grows when uncertainty dominates the mind. Thanksgiving interrupts that cycle by affirming God's control. It calms the heart and steadies the spirit. Even without answers, peace becomes possible because trust has been firmly established. When thanksgiving declares trust while answers are delayed, it proves that faith is not conditional. It does not depend on speed, clarity, or immediate resolution. It stands firm on belief in God's character. That kind of faith remains strong in silence, confident in waiting, and unwavering in hope even when the answer has not yet arrived. What you focus on grows in importance, strength, and influence over your life. The mind is constantly magnifying something, whether you are aware of it or not. When your attention is fixed on problems, they begin to feel heavier, more threatening, and more controlling. When your thoughts revolve around fear, fear gains authority over your emotions and decisions. But when you intentionally magnify God through thanksgiving, the weight of those problems begins to shift. They may still exist, but they no longer dominate your inner world. Magnifying does not change the size of an object. It changes your perception of it. A magnifying glass does not make something bigger in reality, but it makes it appear bigger to the eye. In the same way, constantly thinking about obstacles makes them appear overwhelming, while constantly acknowledging God's power makes them appear greater in your awareness. Gratitude functions as a spiritual lens that refocuses your vision. It reminds you that no situation is larger than God's authority. Complaints feed helplessness. The more you rehearse what is wrong, the more powerless you begin to feel. Complaining creates a cycle where frustration reduces more frustration and negativity multiplies. Gratitude breaks that cycle. When you thank God, you interrupt the mental loop of despair. You stop reinforcing fear-based narratives and start reinforcing trust. That shift changes how you experience the same circumstances. Magnifying God through thanksgiving brings clarity. When anxiety takes over, thoughts become scattered and judgment becomes clouded. Gratitude stabilizes the mind. It pulls your thoughts out of chaos and centers them on truth. By focusing on God's faithfulness, you gain perspective that helps you respond wisely rather than react emotionally. Problems feel less confusing when you remember who is guiding your steps. This principle also reshapes emotional resilience. People who constantly magnify problems become easily discouraged. Every setback feels like a defeat. Every delay feels unbearable. But when you magnify God, setbacks become temporary and delays become manageable. Gratitude strengthens emotional endurance by reminding you that the story is not over yet. You learn to see difficulties as chapters, not conclusions. Magnifying God does not mean denying reality. It means refusing to let reality overshadow faith. You acknowledge the challenge, but you choose to place greater emphasis on God's presence and power. Gratitude gives you language to affirm that choice. Each time you thank God, you are reaffirming your belief that He is working, even when you cannot see the results yet. What you magnify also shapes your expectations. When you magnify problems, you expect failure, disappointment, and loss. When you magnify God, you expect provision, guidance, and strength. Those expectations influence how you approach decisions, relationships, and challenges. Gratitude builds anticipation rooted in faith rather than fear. It prepares your heart to receive God's help instead of bracing for the word. Saint, magnifying God through thanksgiving also affects your spiritual confidence. Fear thrives when God feels distant. Gratitude brings Him close in your awareness. As you consistently thank Him, you become more conscious of His involvement in your life. Small blessings become noticeable, and past victories come back to mind. This awareness builds confidence that God is not absent, but actively present. The act of magnifying God shifts power dynamics in your inner life. Problems lose their authority when God is elevated. Worry loses its voice when gratitude speaks louder. Doubt weakens when thanksgiving becomes a habit. You may still feel pressure, but it no longer controls you. You begin to operate from a place of trust instead of tension.
This focus also transforms how you interpret challenges. Instead of seeing obstacles as threats, You start seeing them as opportunities for God to demonstrate his faithfulness.
Gratitude reframes difficulty as a place where God can reveal his strength. This perspective does not remove hardship, but it removes hopelessness from hardship. Magnifying God influences daily behavior. When he is larger in your vision, obedience feels less burdensome. Trust feels more natural. Fear-based decisions give way to faith-driven action. Gratitude keeps your heart aligned with what matters most. It continuously pulls your attention back to God's sovereignty, preventing circumstances from becoming idols that dominate your thoughts. As gratitude becomes consistent, it reshapes your internal dialogue. Instead of asking, what if this goes wrong? You begin asking, what if God is already at work? That question alone shifts your emotional experience. It invites hope where anxiety once lived and peace where chaos once ruled. When you magnify God, your experience of life changes, even if your circumstances remain the same. Problems are no longer the loudest voice in your mind. Gratitude ensures that faith speaks louder than fear. Trust stands taller than worry. And God remains greater in your awareness than anything you are facing. Gratitude has a renewing power that reaches deep into the inner life. When you give thanks consistently, something shifts within you before anything shifts around you. Weariness often comes not only from the weight of circumstances, but from the constant mental and emotional strain of focusing on what is unresolved. Gratitude relieves that strain by redirecting attention toward what is stable, faithful, and sustaining. It reminds you that you are not drawing strength from your own ability, but from a source greater than yourself. Strength is not always the absence of weakness. Sometimes it is the ability to keep moving despite it. Gratitude strengthens you by realigning your focus with God's faithfulness. Each time you thank him, you are reminding your soul of past moments when you were helped, protected, and carried through difficulty. Those memories become fuel for endurance. They reinforce the belief that the same support is still available for the next step ahead. When life feels heavy, the future can feel overwhelming. Gratitude narrows your focus to what you can handle right now. Instead of being crushed by the entire journey, you are empowered to take one faithful step at a time. Giving thanks for present grace keeps you from being paralyzed by future uncertainty. It shifts your energy from fear to forward movement. Gratitude also sharpens spiritual awareness. Discouragement dulls sensitivity to God's guidance, making it harder to discern direction. Thanksgiving clears that fog. It quiets internal noise and creates space for clarity. When your heart is thankful, you become more attentive to subtle promptings, wiser in decision-making, and more confident in trusting the path ahead. This strengthening effect of gratitude is especially evident in moments of transition. Change often drains emotional energy because it requires adjustment and trust. Gratitude stabilizes you during these times. It reminds you that while circumstances may be shifting, God's presence remains constant. That awareness provides the courage needed to step forward even when the outcome is unclear. Gratitude fuels perseverance by reinforcing purpose. When you thank God for where you are, you acknowledge that your current position has meaning. Even if it is uncomfortable, it is not meaningless. That understanding strengthens resolve. It helps you endure seasons that demand patience, effort, and resilience. Gratitude reframes endurance as participation in something purposeful rather than mere survival. Giving thanks also protects against burnout. Constant striving without reflection drains the spirit. Gratitude creates moments of pause where you recognize progress, growth, and grace. These pauses restore emotional energy. They remind you that you are not failing simply because you are tired. Gratitude gives permission to rest in trust rather than exhaust yourself in anxiety. As gratitude strengthens you, it also deepens humility. You become more aware that your progress is not solely the result of your effort, but of grace. That humility removes pressure to prove yourself and replaces it with peace. You move forward with confidence, not arrogance, trusting that God will provide what is needed for the next step. Gratitude strengthens relationships as well. When you are thankful, you become less defensive and more gracious toward others. Stress often makes people reactive, but gratitude softens responses. It allows you to approach conversations with patience and empathy. This relational stability provides additional support as you navigate challenge, GES, and move forward. The renewing strength of gratitude also shapes inner dialogue. Instead of repeating thoughts of limitation and fear, thanksgiving introduces affirmations of faith and trust. This internal shift changes how you approach obstacles. You stop asking whether you are capable and start trusting that God will equip you. Gratitude reframes limitations as opportunities for divine assistance. As strength increases, courage follows. Gratitude reminds you of God's involvement in your life, making obedience feel less risky. You become more willing to step into unfamiliar territory because your confidence is anchored in faith rather than certainty. Each step forward becomes an act of trust supported by gratitude. Gratitude strengthens endurance by keeping hope alive. Hope weakens when focus remains on hardship, but gratitude fuels hope by highlighting faithfulness. This hope is not naive optimism. It is steady confidence rooted in trust. It enables you to continue moving even when progress feels slow. Through consistent thanksgiving, you develop a resilient spirit capable of handling pressure without collapsing. Gratitude becomes a source of inner renewal that empowers you to keep walking, keep trusting, and keep taking the next step with strength that does not come from circumstances, but from faith. A life shaped by gratitude speaks long before words are ever spoken. When thanksgiving becomes a consistent response rather than an occasional reaction, it begins to define how others experience your faith. People notice how you carry yourself in pressure, how you respond to disappointment, and how you remain steady when circumstances are unstable. Gratitude becomes visible through attitude, tone, and behavior, quietly communicating trust, even in difficult moments. A thankful life carries credibility. Many people talk about faith, but gratitude lived out in hardship demonstrates it. When you choose to give thanks while facing challenges, it shows that belief is not dependent on comfort. This kind of testimony is powerful because it is authentic. It does not rely on perfect outcomes, but on consistent trust. Observers see that your peace is not fragile and your hope is not easily shaken. Gratitude transforms ordinary moments into opportunities for witness. Simple expressions of thankfulness in daily conversations reveal a deeper perspective. Instead of focusing on what is lacking, you highlight what is sustaining you. This approach invites curiosity. People begin to wonder what anchors you when life feels uncertain. Your gratitude opens doors for faith to be seen rather than explained. A thankful life also reflects humility. Gratitude acknowledges dependence on God rather than self-sufficiency. It communicates that strength comes from trust, not control. This humility resonates with others because it is relatable. People connect with sincerity more than perfection. Gratitude makes faith accessible, showing that trust is possible even in imperfection. Consistency in thanksgiving builds trust with others. When your response remains grounded, regardless of circumstances, people learn they can rely on you. Gratitude stabilizes emotions and reactions, creating a sense of reliability. This steadiness becomes a testimony of inner peace, rooted in faith rather than external security. Gratitude also shapes how you treat others. A thankful heart is less judgmental and more compassionate. When you recognize grace in your own life, you extend grace to those around you. This kindness becomes a living testimony of faith in action. It reflects a belief system that values mercy, patience, and understanding. A life of gratitude influences environments. Whether at home, work, or within a community, Thanksgiving changes the emotional climate. Positivity rooted in faith creates spaces where hope feels possible. This influence does not require preaching, it requires presence. Your gratitude sets a tone that others can feel and respond to. Testimony is strengthened when gratitude remains steady through loss and disappointment. When life does not go as planned and Thanksgiving still rises, it demonstrates depth of faith. This resilience challenges assumptions that faith is only for favorable conditions. It shows that trust can coexist with grief and uncertainty. Gratitude also provides a framework for processing hardship. Instead of becoming bitter, you become reflective. You learn to see meaning even in difficulty. This perspective encourages others who are struggling. Your ability to remain thankful offers a roadmap for navigating pain without losing hope. A thankful life invites imitation. People are drawn to peace they cannot explain. When gratitude consistently guides your reactions, it models an alternative way of living. Others begin to consider the possibility that faith could bring similar stability into their own lives. Gratitude expressed through action strengthens testimony. Acts of service, generosity, and encouragement become natural extensions of thankfulness. When you give thanks for what you have, you are more willing to share it. This outward expression reinforces the message that faith produces tangible compassion. Living with gratitude also shapes how you speak about challenges. Instead of exaggerating problems, you speak with balance and hope. This honesty combined with faith builds credibility. People trust your words because they are grounded in experience rather than theory. A thankful life carries influence beyond immediate circles. The way you respond to adversity can inspire those who are watching quietly. Your gratitude may reach people you never realize are paying attention. This unseen impact adds depth to your testimony. Gratitude allows faith to remain visible even when circumstances are difficult. It ensures that belief is not hidden behind fear or frustration. By choosing Thanksgiving consistently, your life becomes a living message of trust, resilience, and hope that speaks powerfully without the need for explanation.